Hey, morning, afternoon, evening, depending on where you are on the planet. I noticed already on the LinkedIn Live comments, there's folks tuning in from all around the world. Very cool, very much appreciated. We are streaming this live to LinkedIn, to YouTube, and to Twitter. Just trying to reach out to as many folks in the community as possible. This is going to be interactive. This is the first in a series of events we're going to be doing like this. So if you have questions, please fire them off in the chat on LinkedIn, on YouTube, or on Twitter. We've got a team monitoring that because it's kind of crazy just for us while we're having that discussion to do it ourselves. So the team will pull those questions and bring them up to us so that we can include them in the conversation. In case you're wondering, we were batting around the idea. So the team at Trend Micro were kind of batting around this idea and saying, hey, we've been reaching out to a lot of folks. We go to a lot of events. In fact, one of our guests today is at an event right now. We've been going to all these events. We've been putting out different content, and we've been working heavily in the cloud publicly for 7 years. We've been, experimenting and working with it internally for even longer than that. And we kind of realized that, we dropped the ball on one particular area, and that was really sharing and highlighting a lot of the deep expertise that we've got at the company, because we don't just make products and services and sell that out to our customers to help you be more secure on your cloud journey and in the cloud, but we're a huge cloud customer ourselves, and we've got a deep bench of folks who know a ton of stuff about cloud and have seen every which way of this problem. And we haven't done as good a job as we should have about sharing that with you guys. So this is the first step on a series where we are going to be sharing that information out with you. We are going to be bringing you different perspectives around moving to the cloud, around challenges in the cloud. My name is Mark Nunakoven. I'm the VP of Cloud Research here at Trend Micro. Today we've got two fantastic guests called in from actually a couple different places around the world, but I'll let them explain it to you. Let me just flip over to them live.
Day one, the show hasn't even kicked off yet, so I'm trying to hang out at the booth here. So hopefully the background noise doesn't get too bad. But just quick intro on myself. So I manage the technical team for our Great Lakes region. I've been doing that for about 2 years. But prior to that, my role at Trend has really been focusing on a single solution for hybrid cloud.
Okay, and Fernando, do you want to introduce yourself? Tell us where you're calling in from.
Sure. Like Rand, Brazil, just to visit a couple of fintechs here for this week, and after come back to where I live right now. Like my main focus today is like the solutions architect for all Canada to help customers to build like a security DevOps and cloud security across like multiple cloud providers.
Right on. Cool. And that really, Fernando's story really highlights sort of the global nature of Trend. We have folks all around, and we tend to bounce around a lot in a good way. For those of you on the stream, I know we had a bit of an audio issue in the intro. I'm just going to recap real quick just to cover it. This is the first in a line of Trend series that we're going to be doing. We've been building stuff in the cloud for a long time for you, our customers, and for the community. But we are a huge cloud user ourselves, and we've got a ton of different perspectives. And we noticed that, we haven't done a great job as we should have been about sharing that expertise with you and letting you guys know sort of the different perspectives to help educate. So this series is all about education. It's not about product pitches. We're going to try to share different views on the cloud, see what that is. So Jeff and Fernando are literally in the trenches. Well, not literally, thankfully, but they are digging deep with customers, doing real work, helping solve real problems. And we thought that'd be a great way to kick this off. We are live on LinkedIn. We are live on YouTube and on Twitter. We've got a team monitoring the comments on all three of those platforms. So if you have questions, please raise them there. We're going to address them on the stream. We want this to be as interactive as possible because it's really just a conversation to try to educate, to help inform about various challenges that different organizations see at different times. This is a live stream, so it's maybe rough, like with the audio problems on the intro a little bit there. Fernando's literally dialed in from Brazil, so hopefully we've got adequate bandwidth and things like that. You never know. So bear with us as we work through this. Also, a key point out, because this is live, I know I have a coffee and came prepared. I believe Fernando has a coffee and came prepared. Jeff, do you happen to have a coffee this morning?
I do not have a coffee this morning. Nope. I am not prepared with a coffee.
Okay.
I mean, I can run grab one quick.
No,
You want me to do that
we're
right now? I can probably take my laptop with me, and then we can make it, just give a tour of the show.
We're not there yet. We'll do maybe episode 2 will be trend on the go, and we'll just randomly get people walking through the day and do man on the street kind of things. No, we just needed to rub that in because as we were getting warmed up for this, Jeff was desperately trying to convince one of his colleagues to help get him a coffee because I wouldn't let him go anywhere. And of course, that's not going to happen. You didn't come prepared. It's not. You're just going to have to suffer through, man.
I'll try to stay awake. I'll do my best.
Hopefully we're not that boring where you actually have a risk of falling asleep in this. That will be good feedback from the audience. If we're at the point where one of our guests falls asleep, I don't think we're very entertaining or interesting for the folks who are actually tuning in. But
that is true.
We'll see. Okay. So first question I've got for you, and this is, I don't want to go through questions like interview style because I don't think that's what's going to be the value here because I know you guys, I've known you for a number of years. I know the level of work you do, world-class solutions design, world-class problem solvers. So I don't think going, hey, opinion 1, 2, 3 is going to work, but I'll just kick it off to warm it up a little bit. We see a lot of stuff about cloud. We see a lot of different people positioning different things, especially when it comes to marketing of like, hey, this is the biggest problem, this is the biggest problem, blah, 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 right? And there's a lot of BS out there. There's a lot of FUD. Let me start with asking you, Jeff. What do you see based on your experience, based on your team's experience, what do you think the actual biggest problem in cloud is? So for organizations moving into the cloud, what's the actual biggest problem?
Honestly, what I see and when I walk into most organizations is you're talking to one team about one specific problem, but they're not communicating with other teams. And there's a lot of problems that sometimes can be solved by just bringing the teams together, getting them to communicate. So regardless of, the bigger enterprises are, they're further along. They have dedicated teams and they may be working well together. But, for the most part, most organizations have almost siloed teams. We're starting to see more cloud teams forming, dedicated cloud teams, but that doesn't necessarily then mean that the cloud team is talking to the development team or they're talking to then the security team, right? And we all could be trying to focus on a single problem, but at the same time, each team isn't communicating with one another. So, and when we look at that from a security perspective, that becomes a big constraint when you're looking at your design when those teams are not communicating. So from our perspective, it's again just trying to get all of the right teams in the room to bring that problem, together and communicate better to resolve that.
Okay, and Fernando, I saw you nodding a bit. What do you think?
That it's the most important from like Jeff opinions, right? But one of the things that I started seeing a lot is like a lot of the companies, they start migrating a lot of applications to the cloud as the infrastructure as a service, right? And when the cloud team or the DevOps teams is using multiple like solutions, the systems or the operations, they don't know how to control that. Mm-hmm. They don't have like visibility across the cloud. They starting to have like issues of like misconfiguration or of, like permissions and a couple other things. I think it's like trying to teach internally for all folks in IT how cloud and how the multiple service and cloud providers works will be fantastic. Like for example, when they go to like one cloud provider and they start using serverless, mm-hmm. right? A lot of teams internally, they don't have idea what is serverless, how that works, how I can protect those, how I can make the permissions for like users or developers and all those things, Mm-hmm. It's a huge challenge right now.
And do you see that? So you mentioned, you see people moving over infrastructure services, which basically means servers, right? They're building virtual machines or instances, and are they changing anything or are they just kind of forklifting and dropping what they have?
Correct. Most of the time, like grab everything from the on-premise environment or the data center environment, right? And just move.
And is that working?
Works for like 6 months. And after that, they starting seeing how expensive it is mm-hmm. to like run the same infrastructure in the cloud. And they starting like say, oh my God, we need to adapt to this. We need to create like a microservice. We need to use containers. We need to use like some platform as a service. We need to use like serverless. If not, no makes sense, right? If they don't start using the cloud natives solutions, like doesn't make sense to use like cloud environments.
Yeah, and I mean there was a report that RightScale had commissioned a few months ago that said
Right.
Organizations are concerned at the cost of cloud. And the interpretation at the time, I was like, that doesn't seem to line up. But I think you just nailed it, right? Because it's like, oh, if you're doing the same thing you've always done
Yeah.
in a brand new environment, you're like, why is this so much more expensive? Because you added a middleman and didn't take advantage of anything that they offer, right?
Correct.
Jeff, you were nodding. What do you think there? You've seen?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And that's, I mean, they're moving their applications to the cloud, but then they're also migrating the same tools that they're using on-prem to the cloud, right? And so it's almost twofold, right? We have to, when we migrate to the cloud, we need to look at automating everything, right? And sometimes that requires redesigning your applications, but then that also sometimes means we need to change what kind of tools we use, right? We can't necessarily bring the same tools with us and expect them to operate, even if we do redesign our applications for the cloud, right? We can't have them operate kind of simultaneously like that. But again, it goes back to just things like automating policies, just account governance, like just your reporting, and then bringing all that together. It simplifies. I shouldn't say maybe simplifies, but it provides more of a consistent, cost analysis, right? Consistent cost baseline, right? And that's kind of what, when you look at cost being the number one overall problem, right? It goes back to what Fernando said about the tools and your applications not just kind of being forklifted over, but then again, it's all of these teams at the same time operating independently and not communicating, right? That all boils down, or I guess funnels back up to cost.
Yeah. So you said an interesting word there, governance, which, if we want to put anybody to sleep, that's a great topic we can dive into. But I think it's critical for organizations because it ties together a couple things that you both mentioned with not everybody being at the table, kind of, not taking advantage of the new cloud services and stuff like that. Do you see, is governance just struggling? Is it something people are begrudgingly doing? Are they ignoring it? Like, it makes sense from an organization perspective that you have to have some guardrails up, but are people messing that up, or is they actually pulling it off? Like, what are you guys seeing when you're talking to people?
They try to organize like in different like silos, right, for governance. But like sometimes they try to progress with the same way how they manage like a regular infrastructure. They starting trying to adapt their governance and like a compliance process and a couple other things for cloud, but it's like longer than they think, in my opinion, right?
And do you mean with that, Fernando, do you mean that they are taking existing governance from a traditional environment and trying to make that work in the cloud?
Correct. Most of the time, I see those things, right? And but they, when they see they don't have like so much control from like infrastructure side and a couple other things, they said like, oh, we need to change those controls, right? We need to follow maybe CSA, Cloud Security Alliances controls, or they need to follow the NIST framework or AWS architecture framework and a couple other things.
Okay, and Jeff, are you seeing the same kind of thing? Like what Fernando kind of implied is that people are moving forward, failing, and then fixing. Do people do research ahead of time? Like, do they look what they're doing before they go? Or is that a common pattern where they just make a push and then go, oh crap, like I need to fix this, I need to fix that?
I totally agree with Fernando. At the same time, you look at it from an organization's perspective, you're getting cloud thrown at you in every direction. And if you look at how easy it is now to move to the cloud, it's a no-brainer, right? You're getting instructed, these teams are being instructed to move applications to the cloud, and sometimes it's a couple of clicks to get your applications out there, right? But then at the same time, then again, going back to the cost situation, when we do that, you're not then delegating any authority to those same teams around governance, right? You're just basically telling our teams to say, hey, we need to go to the cloud. I keep hearing cloud. Let's move our applications to the cloud. Okay, a couple of clicks later, you got some applications out there, but then there's no authority around cost management or policy assignment, right? And that's where the costs then get out of line.
It's almost like some exec read something somewhere or saw a cool talk and came back and just told everyone what to do.
Hey, cool. I went to this cool conference called Microsoft Ignite. We need to move all our apps to Azure.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's part of the problem is that, especially when you're at, like, we all go to a bunch of conferences and events, is that there's such a great positive energy, and a lot of it is such hands-on. Like at Ignite this week, you're going to see a bunch of hands-on sessions of, you know, how to tackle specific problems, how to solve X, how to solve Y, and people come back and get super excited, but it's that bigger picture that's nowhere to be seen, right? They don't come back and go, wait a minute, what does this mean if we give up this responsibility, or if we change this? How does that fit into the governance model? Because I mean, that stuff's boring, but then we end up in this pattern that Fernando's called out, where it's kind of like, yeah, we're doing this, and oh, we didn't think about that, and oh, we didn't think about that, right? It's like when you do containers, when you start rolling out containers, and oh, I saw Fernando's face.
And no,
I got it.
It's because right now, like, I started. No, not just that. Like, but like you touching a very good point, right? Yeah. They start migrating everything to the cloud or moving a couple applications to the cloud, and they say, but I have the security from the cloud provider. I don't need to do like nothing else. Like, for example, everything's protected cloud provider, and it's like, no, there is like a shared responsibility that you need to know very well, where you need to like fix and fit your security features to protect your workloads, right? And that's a very good point too.
I thought we were past the whole cloud shared security model, because 5 years, 6 years now, we've been kind of showing the same that poor slide that's in all of my slide decks that just won't go away, right?
Yep.
And we're not, and I think we've definitely made progress, right? But as Fernando said, it kind of shifts when you talk serverless or you talk containers and you're moving your applications to more of a pipeline. Yep. That model shifts, and now we're almost back to the education around that shared security model and where different tools fit. What's cloud native? What should we use, and where does it fit, and when do we need a third party tool?
Yeah, and I think that's spot on, guys. Every time we see a new way of deploying or building an app, everyone makes the same mistakes again. Right, it's just, it drives me crazy, because I've seen it, not just in cloud, but way before cloud, where we make the same thing again and again. So we saw it with containers, we're seeing it with serverless, where they're like, oh, I don't need to worry about anything. And you go, we talked about all this, we understood, we were good, because I've got that exact same slide. Every cloud talk I give, there ends up being that same shared responsibility slide. And I'd like to think that the reason we have to keep repeating it is because we've got new people coming in, which is great, right? More people building. But yeah, it's like, okay, we're going to be covering this for the next 10 years at least on the basics of how this works.
Right.
But it's so
what happens, but what happens in my opinion is, like, for example, when we started talking about shared responsibility back in the day, was associated with like infrastructure as a service, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think after they started migrating to like platform as a service and a couple other things, the customers started thinking, oh, I don't need to like protect PaaS or SaaS or any other like type of like as a service solution in the cloud, because the main model of like share responsibility, it's only for right? But it's not true. Like, for example, they need to protect the data, the encryption, the communication through like a serverless. They need to control the permissions. They need to control which specific service the serverless will have access, and a lot of other things. But they forget those things, right?
Yeah. And I mean, I think, I was doing serverless conference in New York 2 weeks ago. And the sort of core community, great. The people who are coming in now, exactly what you just said, with going, well, we don't need to worry about anything, operations or security-wise, because that's the whole point of this thing. And it's like, no, It just shifts. There's difference. You have less, for sure, then that's good. But you still have responsibilities. And, one of those things we always see is the misconfigurations. Right? People making mistakes, not understanding that, you need to lock down S3 buckets. Or actually, I should say, S3 buckets come locked down, and you shouldn't unlock them like everybody seems to randomly do.
You need to sanitize the API gateway communications, for example. The people don't think about those, right?
Yep.
Sure.
Yeah, because we joked about having that shared responsibility slide. Anytime I talk about application development, I've got the same OWASP top 10 slide to show that despite 10 years of application security efforts, injection is still the number one attack when it's probably the easiest thing to stop. And yet 10 years in, we still left, right, and center. It's nonstop injection attacks. It's nuts.
And the fun fact, they create like a new OWASP top 10 for serverless applications recently, right? And cross-site scripting is one of those on top 10.
Yeah, it is, right? And I mean, the thing is you go, and I'm a developer, don't get me wrong, I understand, but you go talk to dev teams, and the first thing they say, like the cliche in security, don't roll your own encryption. Almost every development team I meet is like, oh yeah, we wrote our own input sanitizer. You're like, why? There's literally one well-maintained community edition, free open source, like free as in free beer, free as in freedom, input sanitization library for any language or framework you can find. Why do you write your own? Anyway, that's a little, gonna get me ranty real quick here. So let me change gears a little bit, because we talked a bit about adopting cloud, people getting involved, people getting on board, and having those team discussions. So who do you see at the table for these discussions? Because most organizations, like, cloud's not a new thing. So who do you see who's actually talking about moving forward?
Moving forward, the applications to the cloud, we're saying?
Yeah, well, just like when you're having a cloud conversation, who's actually at the table talking about this stuff? Like, is it just the development team? Is it operations? Is it security? Is it the PMs? Like, who's around having these discussions?
Usually, it's one or two guys, and they've been delegated the cloud guy, so to speak, right? And the cloud guy then is responsible for everything there is cloud, and he's basically the one pushing certain application changes or using or leveraging certain tools, and he's trying to bring everybody that he needs to at the same table. But obviously that's the big challenge. So usually, I mean, you walk in the room and you've got the one guy he was on the infrastructure team. Maybe he was the security guy. I mean, I've had the endpoint guy come in, and you are now the cloud guy. Congratulations. And that's usually how it starts. Yeah, exactly. It's another hat for sure, but that's usually how it starts, right? You have the one cloud guy, and then you come back to the same organization a year later, and there's 4 cloud guys in the room. But again, same thing. I don't know if the organizations are hiring with people with cloud experience. They're more or less saying, hey, you're really good at XYZ, and you seem to love cloud. You, sir, are now on the cloud team. And they sometimes bring different skill sets and things like that, which is needed. But at the same time, the teams that have the authority or the control over what's moving to the cloud and how and when aren't always there.
Right. Yeah, like there's this case, and they have some other cases. Like, for example, some companies, the business unit created like a new application. They move everything right to the cloud, and the main like lead DevOps team or engineer from that specific application, they come to us and they start to talk. Oh, we need compliance. We need to follow this specifically regulation, like PCI DSS, SOX, or ISO 27001, for example, and a couple other things, right? It's pretty common right now. For example, most of the time when we go for like AWS conference, Azure conference, or Google, those type of like guys, they came to us to talk about security, right? Because they have the knowledge, they start being pushed by security and compliance to get those specific achievements for the application. The other case would be the case that like Jeff just like introduced, like infrastructure, like, oh, this is like your new son. Take care about this. And they started taking care about like the cloud environments without never touching cloud solutions. I think those are the two most common that I see in the market.
Okay. Now I'm going to call Jeff on something, because he said
I don't have a coffee, remember.
No. You
Remember, I don't
said
have
in your
coffee.
example that there was a security person or someone with security experience in the discussion.
It happened.
It happened. It
Rare.
happened or it happens?
Okay, it happened. I think
So
it
like
happened one time.
once. There was one time. There
I
was
think it
one
happened one
person.
time. I think it happened
Very rare. Yeah.
one time.
Okay, because that's normally my experience, and I think as an old time security pro, I think we do it to ourselves, but very rarely is security normally a top conversation like from a team member. People are worried about it and concerned about it, but it's not like the security team's there going, "Yeah, cloud." They're normally there going like, "Oh, you're making my life worse because you're moving things even faster, and I don't like that." But yeah, when you said that, I was like, "Wait a minute."
I remember that
But
conversation even. It was one of those things where we said we were talking about vulnerability management, and he said, we were talking, what progress or what process do you use? And he said, oh, well, the developers build their applications, and then we, run some type of vulnerability scan, and then we print out this 30-page report, and then we hand it to them, and we say, fix these. And
Okay.
I said,
oh my god.
okay, that's great. And then, obviously there's ways to mitigate that and include security in that design. But guess what? The people that build the applications that manage that pipeline weren't in the room. So that we had to reschedule another meeting, once we got to that topic.
Hey, that's better than most, right? And I mean, to be clear, I fully believe this is on the security teams. I think we've done a horrible job as security folks of actually helping the business and being involved in the conversation. Most of the time, we just get grumpy and say no to things. And if if somebody says no all the time, you're not really going to go ask them because you already know what they're going to say, right? Okay, I'm going to hit you with something I didn't tell you I was going to do. Because why not? This is the first time we're doing it. So I'm gonna fire off a couple rapid fire. I want a 1-sentence quick response from each of you, and your honest opinion. There's no bad things here. There's no repercussions. So don't sweat it.
The lightning round?
Yeah,
all right.
lightning round, exactly. So first up, Jeff, DevOps. Is it new coat of paint or is it real change?
Oh man, I gotta do this really quick, hey?
Yeah.
I'm gonna call it a new coat of paint.
Okay, Fernando,
Do
new coat of paint?
I need to explain it too?
No, we'll come back later. Fernando, no coat of paint or real change for DevOps?
Real.
Real. Okay. This is good. I like some conflict. We'll dive into that in a second. Okay, this one should be, well, no, I can't bias it, so I'm not going to say it. Fernando, private cloud, real or fake?
Fake.
Jeff?
I'll agree with Fernando on that one.
Okay. Fernando, back to you. Automation, something actually people are doing or just everyone talking about it?
Just talking about it.
Jeff?
We're 2 for 3 here on agreements. Yeah, there's just a discussion.
Okay. All right. Last rapid fire. Jeff, multi-cloud, is that a real thing?
That's definitely a real thing.
Fernando?
Real thing, yeah.
Okay, let's go back for a second. Jeff, explain DevOps. New coat of paint?
I called it the new coat of paint.
Yeah. Why?
Right. And I say that because we're now shifting, right? Different ways to containerize and then orchestrate that containerization, and so many different tools to leverage that it's kind of changed. I don't want to say it's changed the model, but it's changed how we've done the deployment, right? And it goes back to then automating everything, right? Whereas before we may have used some of these tools and may have leveraged a lot of these orchestration and build automations before, but we weren't necessarily including all of the pieces in that same pipeline, right? So that's why I say new coat of paint, because same maybe concept, right? At the same time, a lot of different new tools and ways to do it.
Okay. Fernando, you had the opposite. You said it was real change.
Yeah, why I say that is because, in my opinion, and we see a lot of those articles and books and all those things, it's like every single company right now is like a software company. If they are not, they will die, right? They will die in a couple more years. And this is real. Like if they don't adapt for like a DevOps culture, fast enough, that you have like a huge problem against like startups and new companies, old companies that being adapted for like this new culture. Very.
Okay, fair. I can see both sides.
I agree with you a little bit there. I'm
Yeah.
not agreeing with you totally, but a little bit.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it depends on the organization,
same
right?
thing.
Like we've seen,
Correct.
I was talking to a friend last night, and he was grumbling at the fact that there was literally a team called the DevOps team, and they just had relabeled their operations team. There was no developers on it, and they're like, "Oh, these guys are DevOps teams because they had automated a couple things, and they were just an old school ops team." Which is I've seen that, right? And then the flip side is if you've got a big, massive organization, culture change takes a long time. So like taking two people from dev and two people from ops and saying, I'm going to form a new team, and it inevitably ends up being called the DevOps team, but form a new team just to protect them from all the existing rules and say, you guys just go off and do some work, figure out a better way to do things, and then hopefully add more people to that team over time and basically tip the scales. That makes sense from a culture change perspective, right? But everyone gets called the same friggin' thing. Everybody's a DevOps engineer, which I just go, it's not like, okay, fine, like great new title and same old stuff, right?
Yeah, this is
Take those
the
resumes
dangerous
and
thing.
put DevOps in there. Yeah. DevOps, Kubernetes, Docker, right?
Yes.
Ansible. You got to, those are the buzzwords. You got to throw those in every resume now.
Yes, you got to be a principal DevOps Kubernetes engineer delivering serverless experiences for globally enabled businesses.
I don't know if that would fit on a business card, but yeah, I'd hire you. That's fine. Yeah.
That'd get you through the HR scanning machine for sure. Okay, guys, we've been talking for a while. This has been fantastic. I got a couple questions to kind of round it out before we sign off for this. And, the responses online have been really good. Everyone's just kind of listening, which is great. I think we've been engaging enough that nobody's jumping in with specific questions. But I still got I got a couple interesting ones, a little more personalized here. Fernando, what's the weirdest problem you've ever seen? Like just straight up bizarre when you're doing some cloud work?
The bizarre. Oh my god. The customer was thinking they could like bring their like firewall, the regular firewall, to like a AWS data center.
Like a physical one? Like pick up the box and take it over to AWS and
like ship to AWS. Starting using that as a mini firewall there.
That's one way to think about shared responsibility. Okay, that fits the bill, my friend. Jeff, you got any weird ones?
I don't know about as weird as that one. That's pretty good. But what I was going to say is I remember working with a large MSP, and they were migrating all of their customers, I should say, to the cloud. So everything's on-prem, but they're trying to move everything slowly for all of their customers. And we started talking about how to do security and how to get the security updates, through their systems, and all of this traffic from all of their customers' on-premise sites to flow through a single server, like physical server, to the cloud, to a public cloud provider. And so we're talking thousands of customers here so they said, well, we want to redesign this and we want to have this physical server. We want to put your, security relay on that server, but then also that same server needs to act as a relay for all traffic to the public cloud. And it's like, okay.
It's like a router.
Yeah. That's like must be one heck of a server, but it's a physical server too. Now,
and just one.
Wow.
That was odd. One physical server at every location is how they wanted to do that.
And I mean, there's always weird stuff out there, right? Like I joined Trend 7.5 years ago, and before that I was with the Canadian federal government, and there was always something you found somewhere and just went, like, what series of decisions led you to build this, right? And inevitably you can kind of track it back and go, that kind of makes sense, but like, wow. Okay, last question then. Getting a little more personal, but not bad. So out of Azure, GCP, AWS, Fernando, what's your favorite cloud service?
GCP.
Okay, is there a specific service in GCP that you like to use, or what brings you to GCP?
The simplicity from there,
Yeah.
the deep granular configuration that you can have through the networking side, and a couple very like high in performatic like solutions, like for example machine learning, the voice control system, and couple. For example, another day I was trying to create like a new app for like a Google Home, and took me like 4 or 5 hours to build one. In AWS took me a little bit longer, but like in GCP is much easier for a couple of things. Like AWS has a huge like number of like solutions, but like for example in my GCP, the ones that they try to focus, they do like very, very, very in depth.
Fair. Okay. Jeff? Don't
Well,
let the
I have
fact that
to
you're
say,
sitting in a Microsoft event bias your answer.
Right. That's why I was looking if there was anything behind me that said Microsoft or Azure anywhere. So I don't have to answer. So, I mean, I'm going to go with the fan favorite. I'm AWS. I'm all in. If I had to pick a specific service, CloudFormation all day.
Interesting.
If I can build up the entire environment with a script that sometimes or a CloudFormation template that's handed to me, and I can just click next 3 times, and I have an entire environment set up. I mean, can't beat that.
Yeah, fair, totally fair. It's funny. I'm an AWS community hero. We at Trend have partnered with AWS, with GCP, with Azure. We deal with all 3 regularly. I tend to go service by service. So, like in Azure, I love Cosmos DB. Right? Just don't care what it is, shove data into it and get back what you want. If you want to query it like a graph database, have fun. You want to query it like a traditional database, okay. GCP, I love the thing that annoys everybody the most, which is the fact that everything's off by default. So like you have to go in and enable each API, right? Because from a security perspective, I'm like, that's awesome. You can't mistakenly fire something up because your account literally won't let you. Right, and then in AWS, I just love the fact that I get so much like cool new stuff every year, and because I think they move faster at this point because they, different philosophies, right? They put it out there when it's super early, so we get a ton of stuff. And like I've got a deep racer car next to me here that I got to crack open this week for fun, and there's advantages to all of them. I think it's interesting. So great, fantastic answers, guys. This has been a fantastic discussion. We've had people tuning in from all around the world, from Mexico, Saudi Arabia, India, Nigeria. It's been really great to see the response. Lots of good support. This is the first of many of these coming up. I think we've got 6, so 5 more on the books right away, somewhere in there. We'll have you guys back on the show at some point for sure. Thank you for joining us today. Very much appreciated. Jeff, good luck at the rest of Ignite. If anybody's around Ignite, head down to wherever Jeff is and hand him a coffee. Because he's gotten through this entire thing without one.
I have a session in an hour too. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Give a quick plug. What session are you giving in an hour?
We're basically talking a little bit of what we were going through just in the talk here. So we're talking about automating application deployment through build and runtime security control.
Awesome. Very, very cool. So if you're at Ignite on site,
Theater 8.
What is it? Sorry.
Theater 8.
Theater 8. Go check out Theater 8 in an hour or so. Hopefully that's when the actual time is. I know when I've been asked on the spot, sometimes I can't remember the title or the time of the talk. But Jeff's a fantastic speaker. Definitely go down and check him out. Fernando will be flying around the world somewhere, so take a look up and wave as he passes your city, I'm sure. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Everybody who tuned in to live stream on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and on Twitter, thank you for joining us. We will be pushing it out again ahead of time later this week to tell you what the stream is next week. Keep the questions coming. Thanks again, guys. Have a great day, and we'll talk to everybody soon.